Fortune's Fool by Kollin Cooley. Originally written April 8th, 2016. The entrance to the bar swung shut as Felix stepped in, dressed in a full suit to match the rest of its occupants. He nodded to the doorman with the tip of the hat and surveyed the crowd. This was a luck joint, a place where the lucky gathered to measure the strength of the hands life had dealt them. Gambling in a luck joint was different than a casino. Many of the older establishments that had run on statistics and chance had either been shut down or monopolized by the people that luck always favored. Instead, the men here placed bets on who would come out on top. It was a sort of tournament process. Most often this meant whose luck was stronger, but sometimes even somebody with a weaker luck could use their wits to outmaneuver their opponent, bluffing them out of a winning hand through masterful plays. It was possible to actually draw a better hand than an opponent with stronger luck, sure, but chance grew less and less likely the larger the disparity grew. Felix hated places like this. He always tried to do his best to make sure everybody stood on equal grounds in life, but somehow that was impossible. Whenever he gave food and money to the poor, would that not simply mean that he gave it to the person with the stronger luck? In a world where luck was an all but tangible substance, true equality was almost by definition impossible. So if helping the lesser didn't solve the problem, it stood to reason that the opposite end of the spectrum would yield better results. He walked up to the bar and, after surveying the occupants, sat next to a tall young woman with her brown hair cut uniform at the neck. She seemed to be weighing the worth of human life based on the laughing and drinking men in the room. By the distaste in her features, she didn't seem to think that they were worth so much as the drink she held in her hand. "I knew I'd find you here," he smiled with the secret knowing that would be impossible for anyone to place. "Did you?" she replied, not making eye contact, her languid tone giving him the impression that she had already had a drink or two. "Well, not you, but somebody like you. I know your type," he continued. "My name's Felix. So, let me guess. A woman with lesser to moderate amounts of luck, spending your free time looking for somebody to fill that void, both attracted to and disgusted by the lucky ones." She put her glass down on the counter, sizing him up for the first time. "You should know better than to guess a woman's heart," she sighed. "You're half right, I'll admit, but I don't find this rabble attractive. I just hate them." Felix nodded sagely. "That's why you waste your time staring daggers at them." "What do you want from me?" she retorted. "I want somebody to share an adventure with. I hate seeing trash like these guys use their luck as a means of entitlement. I want the people that have to work for their keep to earn it." "What a noble and righteous cause." She shifted her weight to give way for the sarcasm in her tone. "Will you help me?" "Sorry, I just don't get along well with the righteous types." "But you could. We all want to save the world, but I'm somebody that's actually putting an effort in. How often do you see that?" She paused. It seemed as though she had been about to laugh, but his sincere face made her change her posture again. She looked back to the men. "How about," she pondered, thinking, "I want a nickel." "A nickel? That's it?" He started to pull out his wallet. She put a hand out to stop him. "No, I want a nickel, from 1982. This wasn't really the kind of place that would have a whole lot of change lying around. Nobody in here would pay with cash, but that was probably the point. Felix couldn't help but chuckle. "Of all the random things you could have asked for," he said under his breath. He reached into his pockets and drew out a small handful of spare change. He laid it out on the counter in between them, without having inspected the coins. The woman furrowed her brow and looked down at the change. Of the 7 coins, 3 of them were nickels, but every single coin in the pile was minted in 1982. How in the world? Felix shrugged as if he had never seen the pocket change before in his life. "You're one of them, aren't you?" she asked. "You're lucky." The expression on his face was a sober one. His eyes were closed, and he was nodding. "Why do you need my help?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I have an ambitious task ahead of me. I can't do it alone, regardless of how lucky I am. I don't know what you can do, but I know it'll help my cause. Let's just say it wasn't chance that brought us together," he winked. "You don't want my help," the woman stated, finality etched into her tone. "If that were true, you wouldn't have been here when I walked in." "I don't think you understand," she sighed. Felix held out his hand to touch her, but she averted his touch, moving her hand away to avoid contact. "Trust me, having me around is a bad idea." He frowned, thinking. Biting his lip at an idea, he nodded to her. I don't have bad ideas. I'll prove it. Then he turned to the rest of the bar. Everyone! He shouted. I have an announcement! A few men stopped what they were doing to glance back at him, but the rabble of the building wasn't deterred. I will pay $10,000 to the man that can roll anything other than a 1 on any die in here. The room stilled. Then, the clamor resumed with revitalized spirit. Everybody was grabbing all the dice they could. Dangerous game to be playing, the woman said, facing the room, but in a voice only meant for him. Men envy those with more luck than them. Only because those men they envy are invulnerable. Luck did extend to life or death scenarios. A lucky man would crash at a hospital if he drove drunk. He could find something to defend himself with if a rabid dog attacked him, and bullets would go wild and miss if he was being shot at. Felix looked back to the woman, reaching into his suit pocket and pulling out a deck of cards. A man's luck is both his greatest weapon and his greatest defense. Shuffle this for me, would you? She took the deck with a suspicious hand and inspected the cards. They aren't trick cards, he laughed, as if I would need such a thing. She was a little disconcerted by the fact that around them it was blatantly apparent that everyone had begun to roll 1s on every single die on every throw. The shock and bewilderment sent out more than a few curses, but it seemed that everybody was too astonished at the sheer implausibility of the matter to even come up to Felix claiming they had rolled anything else. She took to shuffling the deck as requested, too amazed to react differently. So, Felix began, what's your name? Mallory. Lovely name. Now, I know you're special. I knew I would meet someone special today, you see. But I'm not sure how. I trust you can help me with my cause, if you're willing. All I'm asking is that you meet me halfway. She made no reply. Instead, she passed the deck back to him. By now the amazement in the rest of the pub was reaching an uproar, and many of the men were getting visibly angry. It wasn't so much that seemingly free money was out of reach, since more than a few of them were probably well supplied with funds as it were, but they were so shocked that their various degrees of luck held no water to Felix's own that the tension of the room inflamed. Felix took the deck and, without ceremony, played the cards face up one at a time to reveal that every single card was in order by suit. The number of combinations of a simple deck of cards, 52 factorial, is a number over 60 digits long. Felix had taken a number that dwarfed the amount of microseconds that have occurred since the beginning of time, and he had picked out the result that he wanted. He leaned in and stared into her eyes. I know you can help me. I don't know how, but I know you can. She knew in that moment that he could have any life he chose. Any life that could be achieved for any man, and perhaps even some that no normal person ever could, was within Felix's hands. And he chose her, in a sense. Who was she to refuse him? You have no idea how stupid you are to entangle yourself with me, she smiled. He shrugged. I guess I'll find out then. He took the cards and placed them back into the box before tucking it into his suit once more. He placed a hand on her wrist and winked. She drew a breath in shock at his touch, as though she had never experienced this sensation before. She tensed up, her face a mask of consternation. He let go swiftly but with caution, trying to refrain from further damage. No, she whispered, eyes closed as if she had lost a battle. Felix frowned, trying to discern what he had done wrong. He turned his attention away from her only when he heard movement of people drawing near. It wasn't until that moment that he realized that most of the bar had gone quiet once more. There a problem, miss? A voice said. Looking up, he noticed they were surrounded by a group of gentlemen that looked ready to pound somebody into dust if they had to. None of them were exceptionally hard-bitten, but Felix himself wasn't a large man. His body tensed at the sight of the direct opposition in such close proximity. Mallory frowned, obviously apprehensive. In spite of that, she shook her head. Felix sat up into a more defensible posture before speaking. Is there a problem, gentlemen? Felix asked, drawing their attention to him. His tone was professional yet comfortable, though he himself was more than a little worried, at least for Mallory's sake. Did any of you manage to beat the odds? No, one said, his voice higher pitched than Felix would have imagined. But as it so happens, we're not so happy somebody with as much luck as you has the nerve to come into our place and ruin our fun. He glanced back at Mallory at that last bit, though his glance wasn't directed at her face. Felix held his hands up. I'm sorry, sir, it wasn't my intention to ruin your fun. I simply thought it'd be enjoyable for all if there was a little sport thrown into the evening. You could have gone back to your games if you weren't interested. Hard to gamble with dice when all you can do is roll 1s, another man said. He had a point. Are you one of those guys that owns the lotteries and casinos these days? A third asked. He wasn't, but it seemed as though these guys weren't going to back off until their bloodthirst was sated. Look, I don't want any trouble. I'll give you each some money if that's what you're after. Out of his periphery, he managed to find Mallory's hand and covertly grab it, squeezing it gently for assurance. She didn't try to break his grasp, but made no reply by sound or touch. She was probably far more scared than he was, and rightfully so. She clearly didn't have the same sort of protection as he did. We don't need your money, the high-pitched one said. Oh, Felix sighed a fake breath of relief. Then we'll be on your way if you don't mind. With that, they both stood from their stools, though Mallory did so reluctantly. Felix pushed past the men as affably as he could manage, smiling the whole time and still holding her hand as he led her along. The men, miraculously, made no move to stop them. They were almost out of the bar when somebody said something too quietly for Felix to make out. Out of the corner of his eye, he turned to see one of the men pulling a gun out of his suit and pointing it at the two of them. Time slowed as Felix pulled Mallory back and out of the way, pushing himself in between her and the gunman. A shot rang out, and for the first time, Felix saw his own blood. The end.